This gospel that we have today continues the gospel that we had last week. Last week, if you remember, Jesus stands up in the synagogue in Nazareth, and he reads from the prophet Isaiah. And at the end, he has this passage right at the beginning of our gospel today. He says, "Today this scripture passage is fulfilled in your hearing." Now, at first, it gives us what the reaction is of everybody here in Nazareth. It says that they spoke highly of him, and they were amazed at his words. You can imagine, this is his hometown. He's from there. And so now he's come back, after leaving for a while. And I'm sure they had heard stories about Jesus and all the good that he'd been doing. And so they're excited to see him back. That's our Jesus. He's from our town. And so he stands up and is back for the weekend liturgy. But their tone changes rather quickly, because then they listen to what Jesus actually says. And when Jesus says this passage is fulfilled, he's telling everybody that I'm the Messiah. I'm the one that God has sent. And that's pretty startling for them, because you can imagine they knew his parents. They knew him growing up when he was a little boy. They knew he worked with his dad as a carpenter. Leave for a little while and come back, and now suddenly he's got all these big ideas. Who does he think he is, having left our town? And so it says they even get to the point in which they're filled with fury, and they decide to kick him out of town. Even to the point of taking him to the hill, and they're going to hurl him off the hill. Of course, Jesus is able to walk through their midst and go away. Makes me think a little bit about how sometimes we can react when things don't go exactly the way that we anticipate, or maybe somebody says something against us. Now, how often tempers can flare. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a kind of culture that almost teaches us to act in that way, to react so strongly, to get upset maybe about every little thing, to take offense, even to play as though I'm the victim all the time. We hear people talking about, now people get triggered by so many different things, words people say, or even things that they wear. So many times people can be quick to want to get back, to sue somebody else, or to say nasty things on social media, or gossip and destroy reputations. But this kind of reaction, when people hurt us, can't be the reaction for us as Christians. Even when somebody has legitimately hurt us, we need to pay attention to how Jesus responds. Not with anger, but instead he calmly passes through their midst and goes away. So it's a couple lessons for us there to respond with that same kind of calmness whenever someone may attack us. Also, if we become consumed by anger or wanting to get back at them, we might find in our situation too that Jesus passes through the midst of ourselves and his peace is gone. There's very little room for him in our heart if it's filled with anger or resentment. We can also look to the first reading today from the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah had to undergo the same kind of difficulties. When he was supposed to preach the word, the people did not like it, and they persecuted him as well. But instead of playing the victim, Jeremiah is told by God to gird up your loins and stand up. Do not be crushed on their account. Sometimes that might be how we feel when people attack us. We feel crushed because of what they say or do. But we can't let someone else determine by what they say or do to us how we carry ourselves, to determine our mood, to seek revenge. Instead, we want to act like Jesus and react with love. A love that's described beautifully by St. Paul in the second reading. Love is patient. It's patient even with those whom are hard to be patient with. Love is not quick-tempered. It does not brood over injury. We can't be resentful. We can't hold those feelings inside of us. We need to forgive one another, even if that person never says they're sorry, never seeks for forgiveness for what they've done. Love, too, Paul says, endures all things. It bears all things. Yes, life has different trials, even from those around us and what they say and do to us. Moments that we might be attacked or lied about. But with God's love, we can bear even those kinds of trials. We don't have to let persons or circumstances determine how we feel or what we do. Jesus in the gospel didn't let their anger, their hatred, their negative comments toward him determine how he carried himself. He knew well who he was, that he was sent by his Father to redeem us, to bring us salvation. And so, as we too are God's children, we can't let what other people say determine how we carry ourselves, but rather how we know God sees us, the God who loves us, who died for us. So we can follow the Lord's advice to the prophet Jeremiah to not be crushed on anyone's account, but rather to stand up, child of God.